Okay, so welcome you, Luis, and people who are here with us today. And then I welcome everybody who's going to watch this afterwards. And today I invited for this interview Luis Mazzanti, and I'm going to introduce you, Luis, soon. But first, I would like us to just ground for a little bit. So please close your eyes for a moment. Close your eyes and just feel your body in this moment. And feel your breath entering your body. And for a moment, just tune into that rhythm that is moving you in this life, in this physical reality. And check how deep is your breath or how shallow is your breath, and just observe it without changing anything. And into this space, I want to invite our full presence of our physical body, our mental body, our emotional body, and our spiritual body. And I invite support of the energies from the unseen world as well. May they be with us and guide us and show us what is possible in this moment and those things that maybe we wouldn't see otherwise. And when you are ready, you can open your eyes. So yes, hello again, and Luis Mazzanti. I met you about 6 years ago, I think it was, in Poland, when you came to teach. And you were teaching about intimacy and relationships and connection and sexuality. Mm. And it was an amazing time. And I felt that this sisterhood bond was created between us. And it feels like we have similar mission on this planet and we go in similar direction. And although we chose maybe different paths, but yes, I feel this strong sisterhood. And Luis used to be a psychotherapist. At first, she was a professor at the university. And then she became psychotherapist and created psychosexual somatics therapy. And now she's working mainly with women. And she has a 2-year coaching training for women. And it's in inner leadership training. So maybe, Luis, you would like to add something more about yourself.
Yeah. Thank you, Kasia. I don't know if I really want to add more about myself. That's kind of it. I have my professional practice. I run a coaching training with 2 other women. And I am passionate about that. And that leads back to when we met, 6 years ago. We saw each other and we just knew that we were on a similar mission, and it's about women's work. Of course, it's about women and men, but it really is about the experience of being a woman. I think that's what we met around, and that's what my work evolves around. And that's, I think we share that, and the listening for the future that's emerging, that we both do. So that's part of all the work that I do, in whichever way I express myself and in whichever way I'm available to people. It's about that, and I it's beautiful to meet people when we share that.
Mm. So what does it mean to you that that work with women, and why women?
Why women? That was for a long time. Why women? I always knew. For me, it was about being a woman. And I think it actually links back to my previous career. As you mentioned, I had a really wonderful academic career, and I peaked at, I think I was around 35 when my academic career really peaked. And I just remember having a moment of awakening. I was in the process of being offered the professorship that I took. That was kind of also the place from which I left my career, but I reached that. But I remember tapping away on my laptop and having a window open to the garden, and I could just hear my neighbor was doing some gardening, and just the sound of, she was doing some gardening and she was pouring water into a water bucket, and I could just hear the water splashing. And it was this moment of waking up and thinking, what am I doing? Like, I have no idea. I'm not connected to life. I'm just here in my intellectual world of concepts and thinking and my laptop, and I have no idea about life outside the window and the sound and the whole. It really took me into, I don't know who I am as a woman. Like, there's a woman here and I have no idea who she is. I have no idea about this body. I had no idea about my sexuality. I have no idea about my spirituality. That was the beginning. And it really was about the experience of being a woman. And it came at the same time as a spiritual awakening, and an awakening to life. And gradually I had to redo my own traces and come back to exploring, what is this woman about? What is that life experience about? And I started exploring. I started looking for things that had meaning, but it was always about, having lived for so long without being aware of being a woman. I wanted to find out. So that's a journey that I've been on the last 15 years. So that's why it's about women. It's because I didn't know what that was, and I wanted to find out.
Mhm.
I remember looking at other women and looking at their bodies and thinking, wow, that's what a woman looks like. That's what a woman's body looks like. I wish I had a body like her. It was crazy. I felt like I didn't feel like I was really, I was really connected with my own body.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting that you said that this splashing water created this awakening, because to me, water is about feminine spirit. It's totally about flowing and emotions. It's about this feminine side. So it's interesting that this splash of water took
Yeah.
you on this
Thank you. I
journey.
never thought about that, but you're right. Yeah.
So how did you find out what it was to be a woman? Way
How
back.
did I find out? How did I find it? Was very connected to, also to a spiritual awakening. So those two things were together. So I started looking around for, what was I drawn to? And I can't say, I was probably more looking for my spiritual self calling, that I was consciously looking for the woman, but they were very connected. So I just started doing workshops and doing trainings, and eventually I found the psychotherapy training that I did in London, that was a psycho-spiritual training. I found a psychology, psychosynthesis, that holds a spiritual perspective to also a human psychology. And that really took me deep into my experience of wanting to explore my own identity. And of course, and it came in the form of a relationship with a man, and later a marriage, that I got to experience myself as a woman in a different way. But it was very connected. And all that I learned through these experiences, I put it into my teaching. I put it into what I was offering women. And I think most of what I learned was actually through mirroring. It was through being mirrored as a woman by other women and by men. And I think that's actually where I learned it most was in that conscious centering, conscious awareness of I'm a woman. What does that mean when I connect with other people? And I don't mean necessarily in a sexual way, but just as a human being, being aware of the mirror. I remember a colleague, a friend actually from university in Denmark, she said to me, she said, that's so funny that you're interested in that. I never thought about the fact that I'm a woman. And I realized, yes, exactly. That's how I felt. And that's probably how a lot of women feel, especially in Denmark, or especially in these countries that are very evolved about gender equality, etc. It's like we end up neutralizing the field, actually. So I had to leave my country. I had to go to England. I had to come to a place where I was free to explore myself without the conditioning that I was carrying. I think that was a big part of it too.
Now, when you mention gender identity, there's like a trend now. I think it's all over the world, but I observed that in Poland among young people in gender fluidity. Like there are more and more people who want to be called they and not she or he. And at the beginning of many workshops, when I was in Texas, for example, in the workshops, that was the question at the beginning of the workshop: what is your pronoun? And how would you like to be named? So, and it becomes like, I have friends in Poland who are working with teenagers, and they said that in the last 3 years, it's such a huge shift, and it creates a lot of tension, because there is a lot of conversation among young people around that, and it's almost like not too cool to be identified with your biological gender. Like there's a lot of chaos around that. So what's your perception of that?
I think we ought to learn from young people. I think the future is emerging through them. And I think we live, I mean, I am hugely inspired by something called spiral dynamics. It's a way of understanding how we evolve as humankind. We evolve our consciousness, and we evolve it to greater and greater levels, but we also include the past, but we're always evolving. And I think we are evolving as a human species. That's what I'm really, really interested in. How are we evolving as humankind? Who are we becoming? And I think what we see now among young people is a future that's emerging. I think it's a stage we have to move through. I don't know what's like the end stage. I don't know, but I think we ought to listen, because they're picking up something that is shaking us out of our rigid structures, because some of the gender differences are, of course, they're cultural conditioning, and they keep us in a stuck position that's not true. It's not true. And who knows what's true? We have to find out by experience. We have to evolve and experience. And I think it's entirely necessary and healthy to challenge and shake up our gender identity, so that we are free to find out who we are. Is there a tendency to be overdoing it? And is there probably some young people that also do it as a way of rebelling against authority and all? And does it have shadows? Of course. But does it have an important role to play in how we evolve? I definitely believe so. And I don't, I mean, no one is to tell someone else what their gender identity is allowed to be or not. So I have a huge respect for people making choices that are right for them. And I think it's good to question our norms. It's healthy.
Yeah, so it seems like it's part of this huge shift in consciousness. To me, that's how it feels like we are questioning, we're starting to question everything.
Yeah.
From the very, very basic and foundation.
And that's healthy and needed. Yeah. Not as an end stage. That's what I'm thinking, Kasia. It's not like, okay, now we question it, now it's right. Now we reach the goal of this is how things are. I don't think that exists. I think, as I said, we are constantly evolving. And that means we have to constantly question ourselves I mean, life, death, life cycle. That's what I really believe in. We have to constantly die and re-emerge. And I think that the gender fluidity is a part of that. An old paradigm is dying, a new one is emerging, and there will be a new one emerging through that, and there will be a new one emerging through that.
Interesting.
But I still feel very much like a woman, so we all have to be just who we are and how we feel. So no pressure to have to question it in yourself if that doesn't feel authentic.
Yeah. So I have the same perception that it's just part of this big spiral and the shift and like the wind of change that's blowing. Something is really like this wind is powerful and we don't know where it's going to take us, but it is blowing right now.
I love that you say that. This wind is powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree.
And so I believe that part of this tornado that is happening is your coaching training, yes, the one that you have, that you are running for women. So I would like to know a little more about that.
Yeah.
I know that there are like several stages of it. You have like several themes that you are covering, and it's power, and it's sexuality, and it's love, and it's money,
And consciousness.
and consciousness. Mm-hmm. So
Love,
what are those?
sex. Sorry. What
Why
goes in?
like why those subjects? Like
Why those?
yeah.
Love, sex, money, power, consciousness. Those concepts came to me as the most important for women now to be firmly grounded in awareness of those 5 topics. And I think they're all very important for us to be able to stand on our own feet in this world, so that we can equally co-create the future, co-create the values and the structures of how we want a life to look like. And for me, those 5 topics are simply what a woman needs to know, and where she gets caught, where we get disempowered, where we have our wounds, where we don't know who we are. And each topic builds on each other. But it was very deliberate that I felt that this is what women need to know. This is the topics that we need to have explored in ourselves in order to be who we can be. And I'm not talking about this, fulfill your potential and be successful and all that kind of new age talk. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about discovering our own depth and not be afraid of it, not be afraid of knowing what we know, not be afraid of making choices, not being afraid of stepping up, not being afraid of using our voice, not in an overpowering way, but in a dignified way, in a way that comes from an inner knowing. That's why it's called women's inner leadership, from an inner knowing, so that we are not too innocent and too ignorant and too scared and too whatever we are, not to be firmly grounded in these topics.
Mm-hmm. So can you say a few words about each of them, like power? Because I understand that as inner power, yes, like step into your inner power.
Yeah, the power module is both about it. It's the whole program. Maybe I can say first, the program is structured so that the first part of the training is for the students to go through their own relationship with these 5 topics, and then the next part of the program is teaching them all the professional skills and all the knowledge, all the theory to actually be what we call a therapeutic coach. So a coach that has a deep psychological understanding. That's what we give people. But first they go through their own stuff. And for example, the power module is very much about how do we use our power? How do we abuse it? How do we reject it? How do we deny it? How do we manipulate to power? What is our relationship with power? Because, you know, there is this big movement of Me Too and a lot of clearing our relationship with the masculine and a lot of wounding that's coming up. But in that journey, we are also seeing how some women fall into the same trap and become overpowering themselves. So it's about learning a balanced relationship with our own power, not denying it and not abusing it. It's finding that centered balance inside where we're not afraid of it and we're simply not abusing it. And we have, as women, we have so many tactics that we do exactly what we accuse men of doing, but it's just a little bit more invisible. And in that module, we're bringing just a lot of awareness to what is our relationship with power.
Mm-hmm. So it's more like a workshop style teaching, like where people dive into, like use different tools and exercises, yes, so that people can dive into.
Yeah, it's the first half of the training is personal development. Also because we believe that we exist in a relational field. We exist in a field of consciousness together, which means that we impact each other. So if you want to be a coach, it's important that you've gone through your stuff and you have found a place of resolve inside, because that will be the space that you hold for clients. That's the collective space that we transmit. It's really about transmission. So the first part of the training is very much about people's personal process, exercises. So going through things and, you know, working out your own stuff. We also teach some theory, though in the second half of the training where we focus on the professional development, there's more theory. There's where we have all attachments theory, trauma theory, the nervous system, etc., all the psychological stuff that is important to know. But first of all, we want people to have done their own inner work.
Mm-hmm. And you said that it's about transmission. So do you feel like the presence of the coach, this is what is healing and this is what's the most important for them?
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. If anything we teach our students is to be present with themselves so that they can be present with their clients. It's also, you know, we co-regulate each other. We're always connected. Every time two people are in connection, there's a field that's created. And the more people that are part of that field, if we are conscious about it, it's a strong field of consciousness. So the coach needs to hold that presence in themselves. Like, for example, today you started this call with going inside, with creating a field. We always do that when we teach. We create a field because we work in the field, and the field is healing in itself. It's not the words. And right now, yes, we are having a conversation, but that's not the only thing that's happening here. We're in a field, and the field does most of the work. It really is about holding the personal alignment, the personal integrity, the channel open to what is truth for us. That's why also it's called women's inner leadership, because it's about connecting with the inner truth. Because when we're clear with that, we radiate it. And that's the way that the ripples spread. It's less about what we say and, you know, what we talk about. It's more the presence and what happens in the sacredness of that space.
So what if someone, let's say, is not in the best place that day? They had a rough day or they had a fight with their loved one, and then they have a session with the client. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like this happened in the day, and then there's a session with the client.
Yeah, and I love that question, Kasia, because we're all human, of course. But that's also what we bring. You know, we are not just enlightened beings always in Zen mode. Life is life, and life is real, and life is happening all the time. So every moment is an opportunity to just align while life is pulling us in all directions. And sometimes we want to kick and scream. But as long as the light of awareness is on, I want to kick and scream now. I'm really challenged. I'm having a very, very human and humbling experience. Can I be with someone else that are also going through their own human experience? It's not about detaching and just being all enlightened. It's about being awake while we're human.
I love that you can come with everything that you have, even when you are a coach, when you are leading the session, and when you are holding the space or facilitating, you can just come with that. So this is who
Anything else is impossible, you know, because we do, or we would be having to cancel sessions all the time because we were not completely in Zen. Not how life is, and it's not how it's supposed to be.
Yeah, but then if our nervous systems entrains with each other, yes, because our nervous systems are talking to each other too when we are talking,
Yeah.
or when we are sitting in one space. So I imagine, like when I was doing sessions in the past, it was a bit challenging, you know, when I had a rough day to come to a client with all of that.
Yeah. That's, of course, that's the responsibility that we have as practitioners, as space holders, to regulate ourselves. Of course, we don't want to come into a client session with a dysregulated nervous system. Of course, it happens, but we aim at soothing ourselves, regulating ourselves as much as possible.
So what tools do you use to do that?
We work with the breath. That's, I mean, the breath is where it begins and where it ends, always. The breath is the biggest anchor we have. And I can notice now the need that I have to take a breath, because I get excited when I talk about that. And just that breath, and especially the exhale, because it brings us back in touch with the body. And that is really what the breath does. We cannot be aware of our breath and not be aware of our body. And our emotions happen in the body, and they happen mostly actually in the torso and in the chest and in the belly where we breathe. So when we breathe, usually we're feeling our emotions. So it's such a wonderful way to connect. And if we breathe and we slow down the breath, and especially the exhale gets a little longer, we automatically regulate our nervous system. So the breath is very, very powerful.
So when you were talking, I just noticed myself slowing down the breath and landing here, because I'm also like sitting on the edge and wanting to know. You talked about the field, that the field knows, and that it's the field that is leading us. And the situation came from our training in Poland, where we had this exercise where people would put a pillow that would represent their end goal or who they would like to be. And then they were walking towards that pillow. Remember that? And they put.
I was just going to say, that sounds like something that we conveyed in is that the workshop you're talking
With
about?
you, yeah, the one
Yes,
that.
yes, yes.
With
I remember that very well.
Yeah. And then people would stop when something was like like they had some kind of resistance. They would stop and talk to their consciousness and to their subconscious mind and to their super conscious mind. And I remember I walked outside to the bathroom for a while people were performing this exercise. And then I walked into the room, and I was just drawn by some invisible force. I wasn't thinking at all. I was just walking. And I walked around the room, and I just sat down on one of the pillows. And when I sat down, I saw that across from me, there is one of the participants. And I realized that I sat down on the pillow of their goal.
I think I remember
the place where they were walking towards.
Yeah.
And I was so embarrassed when I did that. It was so embarrassing. But then this woman said that I embody what she would like to become, so that it was perfect that I sat there. I just thought it was my pillow for like sitting where I was translating the workshop, and I thought it was my pillow, but it wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
And And then I feel that it was the field that took me and that led me. It was just the energy that directed me into the place where I was supposed to be in that moment.
Mm.
Though it wasn't comfortable for me personally.
Yeah. It's, you know, Kasia, it's such a good example of how it is to be working in a field. Because when we come together, we form a circle and we have a shared intention, it's a strong field. It is a consciousness that is bigger than our individual consciousness that we tap into. And that consciousness is shared. So you're picking up information, and it's very much, it's interesting that you say you were not trying. You were just doing your thing. That it often happens when you're busy doing other things, that you don't know what you're doing, but you're just connecting and you reacted to it. And that is really how it works so often. It's about working in the field. And of course, constellation work is a very big, you know, known modality that works actively with that. And it's powerful. It's powerful when we open to the collective consciousness. It exists. We are not just individual beings. We are collective fields of consciousness, and we can cooperate with them. We can direct them. We can move them. We can actively participate. And I am so interested in that, in how we actively participate in the fields of consciousness, because I do believe, I know I'm going off a tangent a little bit, but I do believe that that is how we create the future. That's why every person that liberates themselves from a fear, from a block, from an obstacle, you know, we clear the space not just for ourselves, but in the collective. And I do think that's how we move towards a future that's, you know, more clear of the wounds, more healed, more aligned with our true nature, not all the pain bodies of the world, but aligned and not created by the collective trauma and the transgenerational trauma that keeps repeating. But every time we free ourselves, we free the collective. And this is really why I'm doing this work, because it is about the future. It's not about you and mine and this person and this person's personal experience of life. It's about our collective experience. It's about our collective future. But it always and can only start from within.
I have this theory that down below in our source, in our essence, we are flowing in this perfect harmony because we are one. So there is this perfect field that organizes everything in the most harmonious way. And it's our traumas and our blockages and our thoughts and our stubbornness and our wounds that is blocking us from seeing that and from following that, because it feels like there is that impulse inside of us that is guiding our life. And if we were not in the way with our wounding and traumas, then everything would be just flowing in this most harmonious way, just like the oak is growing from a seed and it perfectly knows how it's going to grow, and it grows with other trees and communicates, and the whole system, the whole nature works like that. And it seems that it's just us humans that cannot really flow in that kind of harmonious way.
Yeah.
And we are in the source, yes, but
I think we're moving in that direction. You know, the evolutionary spiral, the evolution of consciousness. We are moving more and more, like baby steps by baby steps. We are moving in that direction. We are moving to understanding as a felt experience that we actually are connected. When you say we are all one, I can't feel it. I can't feel it. It's a concept. I can't feel it. I've had moments where I feel it. And those moments are pulling me forward to uncover more and more. And I think that's where we're going. We are going towards realizing that we are one. And I feel, you know, I remember I was just explaining to one of the students last module that when we create this circle, this space of trust, and what we do is we peel away the wounds. We peel away the wounds that are actually putting up the walls against each other. And we're just peeling away the wounds that prevents us from the love that is actually always radiating. It's always there. We're just so afraid and so intimidated and so protected. But I do believe that, the field of consciousness and realizing that we are one, I think it's born by love. Or I think we cannot not feel love when we feel that. When we transcend our own individual experience of separation, that is love.
And that's another module, yes, of your
Yes,
training.
love is another module, but actually in that module we work very much, we kind of start with where we're getting stuck, which is in our personal relationships. So that kind of universal love, that's where we are moving towards, but we have so much wounding, so much protection. We're really working with the protection, all the layers that we put up against connecting with each other. That's really what we do. And that's attachment wounds, it's developmental trauma, it's all the childhood stuff that keeps us in the state of contraction and protection. That's really what we do in that module.
Going back into that love and that unified field and the flow, I think that's what, I don't know if you know Gene Keys, Richard Rudd. It's like a body of knowledge that comes from human design and I Ching and astrology. But he calls that synarchy, this process when we can step out of our individual field and connect to the unified field, and we start to flow in this beautiful, magical co-creation. He calls that synarchy. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So do people in your training go through personal therapy too?
Yes.
The coaching training?
Yeah, that's a part of the requirement. They have to be in either personal therapy or coaching to support the self-development work, to support them to work through what is coming up. Because in the modules, we get, what it's about. It's really facing ourselves and our blocks and our obstacles and our wounds. So we all have wounds in relation to this love, sex, money, power, consciousness. We have wounds, we have ways that we disconnect and don't want to know and don't want to be empowered and all that. And so we set a personal process, we set that in motion, and then people go and also work with it with a therapist or coach.
Okay. So about wounds, I was stopped there when you were talking about wounds and the connection wounds. Like if you were going to choose one of the like a collective wounds of feminine, would there be like a big shadow or a big wound that is standing out?
Yeah.
And what is it?
Feeling into womanhood. I think it's over time, over centuries, it is the violation of I want to say our physical integrity, the violation of our bodies. And of course, that means also the violation of our personhood, the violation of our emotions. I mean, it's all connected, but the violation of our rights, of our human rights to be our own independent persons.
So and this, like after we went through all this devaluation of our person and carrying this wound, probably like different women have different tactics that they are dealing with it. And I believe that a huge reaction to that wound is rage that is present in women, that I have seen in Poland a lot, women in the streets screaming for their rights. And would you say that that's like a huge reaction to that wound? That's one of the biggest reactions. Probably some of them are hiding. Yes, it goes into those two major directions. Some women are hiding and not showing their true potential and who they are. But there is also this rage that is present. And
Yeah.
it's present in our personal relationships too.
Yeah. It's interesting when you ask the question, Kasia, because, you know, one thing is what's going on now. And, you know, fortunately, we don't have our human rights violated to the same degree as we did historically. But that hasn't gone away. It's still in us. It's still in the collective. And we are, you know, as we spoke about, we're part of the collective. So even though we might not have had those experiences ourselves, it's very much a part of what it is. I'm going to speak just for a moment about what it is to be a woman. You know, our womanhood, our personal womanhood exists in a collective field, and in that collective field, the violations exist. So of course, the rage exists there too. And you know, this is a fine line of opening that wound in order for it to heal. It's necessary, but without directing the collective rage towards personal individuals, towards men where that is not appropriate. And I think this is something that we as women need to be really aware of. What are we projecting onto men? What are we projecting onto the men in our lives, to the men we meet? And I think a lot of, you know, there's a lot of radical feminism that is acting out, that doesn't become actually moving towards a synthesis and moving towards healing, but it's moving towards further wounding. So the wounding just gets, you know, we end up wounding and fighting each other instead of seeing, acknowledging the rage is there, the wrongdoing is there, but it actually also, it exists on both sides. And it's always important to see that men have wounded women. Women have wounded men too. You know, that's why the power module in the training, we also have to look at how are we abusing our power? How are we manipulating? How are we shaming? How do we use our power? Sometimes in a covert way as a victim or as a martyr, but we're still using it. So it's not black and white. We should be very, very careful to blame and project.
I know,
and yet it has to be acknowledged.
I know that I am guilty of that, you know, of like acting out with men in my life. And very often I know that this is not something that comes from my life. It's something that came from the life of my ancestors, from the women who are standing behind me, who never had voice, who could never speak, who were abused, who were beaten, who were abandoned. And sometimes it just comes out, yes, when I am not present, when I am not awake enough.
Yeah.
It just comes through me. And it took me about 20 years of self-work and looking into my own shadows to recognize that that's what I'm doing.
Yeah. I have a huge respect for looking at yourself in that honest way. I recognize the same for myself. Of course, I've been projecting my rage, my personal rage, and the collective rage. Of course, you know, it's what we do if before we turn on the light of awareness. And I mean, even though we're conscious about it, it can still be difficult to regulate yourself when you're in a situation that just, you know, it catches you on the back foot. It still happens because the collective field is so strong. It's so strong still. There's still so much healing that's needed. And the only way we can do it is by acknowledging it in ourselves and by interacting with the men in our lives from that place, not denying what's in the field between us, but not acting it out either.
So really being in a relationship and being with what is happening and like putting the light of consciousness on what is happening between us. But this requires two very conscious individuals to do this work.
It's really, really hard. And mostly both of us, all of us, we get taken by collective energies. It happens so quickly. And of course, we activate each other's nervous system. So you're absolutely right. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of personal work and personal maturity and personal responsibility to do that. But we can. We actually have that ability.
Yeah. I really truly believe that the greatest healing comes from this kind of connection and this kind of bond when two people are healing with each other. But it really requires deep inner recognition and being true.
Yeah. Kasia, this is why I work with relationship, intimacy, sexuality, the relationship between the genders, the relationship between the masculine and the feminine, whichever gender it comes. It's because I believe it is the biggest portal for growth. It's a portal for growth, it's a portal for healing, but it also holds a really important seed for the future. I think a potential we haven't fully yet discovered, what we can create between the masculine and the feminine, and again, it's not really dependent on gender, but what we can create when they come into a true harmony, a true synthesis. When we bring the feminine, when we bring the masculine in equal co-creation. That's very, very hard where we are right now. But I think, back to what you said about the gender neutral, and, they're doing it. They are holding that personal synthesis in themselves. I think they're pointing at something that's really, really important. Not necessarily that's where we are going all as individuals, but they're showing us a synthesis that is happening collectively. And I think it's important. I think it's a message. It's a message to what is possible.
I love that you say that, yeah. Okay, so that now the next module you have is money, yes?
Yeah, yes.
There is power,
Yeah.
love.
So we start in a different order. There's love, sex, money, power, and consciousness. And they build on each other. That's why, it's not a random order.
Okay. Can you say something about that? That they build on each other?
Yeah. But what the money, is that what the one you yeah.
I think this is a big one for
This
women.
is a big one for women, for sure. It's usually uncomfortable for women to talk about money. And it's very interesting what we did actually in the module, which was like, okay, open your bank accounts, get real with what's in your bank account, what's your outgoings, what's your income, what are you projecting into the future? What do you want? How are you firmly standing on your own feet with your own financial awareness and your own financial stability? That can be really scary for women to actually do. Most women don't even want to look at their bank account.
Why?
Because money is something that many women are scared of. Because it's power, the power module comes after the money module. Money is power. When we have money, we're powerful. When we have our own money, we're powerful. And we're actually scared of that.
So are women scared because they don't have that on their account, that they don't have money, and that's why they don't have power? Is this what they are scared of?
It's more like money is a powerful field. Money is a powerful field. And money is a field that most women don't know how to interact with. They feel intimidated by it. They don't understand the dynamics of how it works. And, traditionally, that's been what the men were doing.
Exactly.
And we're still working through that conditioning, and it is so strong still. It's like, oh, no, that's what, I'll leave that to my partner, my husband, or my father, or whoever. Like, they work that out, and it's not how it is for all women, but it's a very, very strong tendency. Or we don't really think about our pension, or we don't think about investing, or we actually don't think about making ourselves financially secure. We don't think about it. We are not as strategic in our minds in general, which means that we become more vulnerable. Because when we don't have a secure financial foundation ourselves, we limit the choices that we have in life, and we also limit the choices we have in choosing a right partner for ourselves, because we're vulnerable and we need to be with someone, and well, this is better than being with no one, or we are giving away our power if we don't stand firmly on being able to create our own life. And as women, we're not really used to doing that. That's easier for men. That men have other things that they're challenged by, but it's usually not money.
So what do you think about relationships where the man is earning money and the woman is taking care of the house?
I think that every couple has to work out what works for them, first of all. Secondly, it can be a beautiful synergy if it is a synergy, if there's real love between them, if it's a real decision of we are one entity and this is what we are doing. You're holding this end of the stick, I'm holding that end of the stick, and both parties are equally happy with that, and there's real love, then it can be a beautiful thing, and everyone is completely, it's important that people are free to make the choices that are right. Absolutely, absolutely. But the shadow is that it's also it's easier to choose, he does it and I can just do this. And if there's not real love, if it's not a real entity, if the relationship doesn't have integrity, then the woman is in trouble. Then she's setting herself up to a difficult path, a disempowered path. So it can work if they're equal in the inner worlds, if they're equal between them. And I'm going to come back to, if there's real love, then it's a beautiful thing.
I love that. Mm-hmm. Yes, this is what I wish people to experience. Yes, this kind of connection with another person in trust and love, and then we can really share responsibilities between each other, and one person doesn't have to carry everything. I know, like, now I am building this place and building a house and building this gathering place, and I'm using a lot of my masculine power to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm missing my feminine. I really would like to just let go and surrender very often, but I cannot, because I have to be on top of everything, and I have to order materials and to make decisions constantly. And it would be so wonderful if I could just like give a part of this responsibilities to someone else and just be more in flow and in feminine energy.
Yeah.
So I suppose I wouldn't mind this kind of relationship where a man is taking care of the financial side of the relationship and I am taking care of this just warmth and beauty and like empowerment from within. And probably I would be criticized by many feminists for saying that, but I really, yeah, this is something that I feel like deep inside me, although it's old-fashioned and that's what my ancestors experienced.
Mm-hmm.
I feel that I would be okay with that if there was true love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Kasia, what you're saying here, it really, for me, touches into how I said, to me, how consciousness evolves collectively, inspires. And every time we move to a different paradigm, there's a difference in paradigm between your grandparents' generations and, our parents and our generations and etc., our children. But I think an important concept is to transcend a paradigm, but to also include. It's both transcend the values, but include them. And there's something in the values that you're talking about that can be transcended. You probably don't want to go back to the 50s where women just didn't have any right and, they just had to serve. And that's not fulfilling for a woman. But there was something right about it.
Mhm.
And can we find what is right about it without without falling into the traps of disempowerment? Can we find the place that's actually, you know, there's some energy that the masculine holds better, and there's some energy that the feminine holds better. And if we can find a way to be in synergy and co-create and still, you know, still come from our different points, you know, you probably carry more of the feminine energy and they would be carrying more of the masculine energy. I think it's natural. I think it's how it is for most of us that are more anchored in one energy than the other. And I think it's natural to follow that. I think we should. So I understand the longing, and it has both I want to say an unevolved version and a more evolved version. And I think, you know, I think that's what we're moving towards. And probably the experience that you're having right now at this stage of your life, where you need to find the masculine, is to just know that you have it. You know, if you need to, you can absolutely create yourself. You don't need a man to exist, because that puts you in a vulnerable position. If you need a man in order to exist, you can have any kind of bad relationship. But if you know that you have the masculine inside yourself, you can be in choice of who you want to call in.
Exactly.
That's
And
much more healthy.
I think that's the crucial word. It's the choice.
Yeah,
Because of the generations before, they didn't have a choice.
exactly.
They didn't even think about this, I guess. They were born into that, so they just followed whatever that was presented to them. And when there is a choice, we can choose whatever we really long for.
Yes, yes. The same as with the gender. You know, if there's a choice, I don't have to be a woman in this particular form. I can just do something else. Wonderful. Maybe by having the choice, I realize I actually like to be a woman like this. So that's how we become empowered, and that's how we can actually co-create, because we can give from a place of choice, not from a place of being controlled, you know, or being disempowered. And again, I'm not saying anyone is doing it to us. We are allowing it, because we are not taking responsibility for our masculine, and that's important.
So it's all about consciousness.
Yes.
Like shedding the light of awareness on
Yes.
every choice that we have and everything that we do, and really looking close at what we are doing and what we are thinking and where we direct our energy and why we are doing it.
And that's exactly, as you say, it's all about consciousness. That's the last of the 5 pillars of womanhood. It's about having consciousness in all areas of life, being able to make choices because we know and we feel and we are able to direct our will. It's about the ability to direct our will with consciousness so that we know what we're doing. We're not acting out of a wounding. We are not reactive, but we are creating.
So we talked about all the pillars besides sexuality. We kind of skipped over it, and I like now I see it's interesting that it was the first word in our title of this lecture, but then we skipped and went through to consciousness.
Let's come back to it.
And probably this is something that's really deep for women, and that's for humanity. I guess this is our life force, yes, sexuality. So
Yeah.
talking about shadows and wounding.
Shadows, wounding, conditioning, what we learned about our sexuality and what we didn't learn, what we believe, what we think is how we ought to be sexual. There's so much clearing up to do there still. Our sexuality collectively is still, it's mainly created around male sexuality, really. What we believe sex should be still in I want to say in the social, how it's been communicated, like how it is, how we think about sex, how we think we should be as sexual women, how we should look, what sex is. All our whole notion of what sex is and what it should be is still mainly determined by the male perspective. And it is so ingrained that we actually don't even really know, we don't really notice, because our sexuality has been shaped from the moment we're born by social conditioning. And I think we're still trying to learn what is female sexuality? What do women really want? What is an empowered, free woman? It's like, I'm just going to make a jump historically back to, for example, Marilyn Monroe. That was such a huge sex symbol. But her sexuality had nothing to do with a real woman's sexuality. And you know, she was deeply unhappy. I think she became a sexual icon, but with a huge expense for herself. And I know, you know, that's in the 50s, but there's still something about how women should look, what they should want, what they should be for men. That's still framed in that way. And for us to realize we don't have to do that anymore. It's not good for us. It's not even good for men. Men don't, I mean, of course, there's a part of that kind of animalistic part of desire and attraction that we still enjoy, and that men still enjoy, the objectification. But the objectification of women doesn't really work in relationship. Men don't want it, women don't want it either. And we're still struggling with that. We're still objectifying each other and ourselves.
So how do we even start to peel that off? Go outside of this conditioning? How do we even start? Where to begin?
Yeah, that's a good question. Where to begin is to begin to connect with our own bodies, to listen, to feel, to touch, to dream, to want our own dreams, our own desires, our own sensations, and develop the ability to even know that we have a right to want or not to want. Both are equally important, to want and not to want what we want or don't want. And I think most women, and probably men too, don't even know. We're so conditioned about this is what sex should be, this is what is expected of us, that we don't even know it could be in any other way. So we have to relearn. We have to relearn what sex is, and start, I want to say start all over again. Start all over again with connecting with ourselves, touch ourselves, feel, get to know who is this essential being. How is it to be in this body? How is it to connect with the senses? How is it to connect with life, with nature? Because that's what sexuality really is about. It's not about genitals rubbing against each other. That's, you know, that's a very, very reductive view on sex. But it's to connect to that life that is available through sex. That's what it's really about, and we just don't know. We've forgotten.
So is this the book Real Sex that you wrote? That's what it's about?
I think I probably, you know, since we wrote that book, it's still true that in that book, what we're doing is that we are questioning the conditioning. We're really questioning the conditioning, but we still have to discover, so what's there when we question the conditioning? What is female sexuality? What is male sexuality? I don't think we know, Kasia. We don't know. I mean, I'm not talking about myself personally. I'm talking collectively. We haven't discovered. We're still deconditioning ourselves. We're still exploring.
Amazing. It seems like we're in the kindergarten.
I think so. You know, we are. But that's with sexuality. That's also with relationship. That's with gender. You know, whatever issue we look at, we're still exploring, what is this? Money as well. What is the financial paradigm? Good God, there's so much to question and decondition in whichever area we look. we haven't even talked about relationships and monogamy or non-monogamy or the institution of marriage and how we manage all that. We're still exploring.
Yeah, and it's all conditioned, yes, because that's what it is. And okay,
Yeah.
let's play it, yes. And everybody is gladly playing into the paradigm that's happening, but then at the same time there's this shift that's happening, and there's this steering that is happening, and people are starting to question, like, really, what's going on in here, yes, and who am I?
Yes. Who am I? That's exactly it. Who am I? Who am I, and what is this? What am I about? What is all this about? Do I want to participate in this, or do I want to create something else? We're living in a very, very challenging time. I mean, we're living in challenging time, a paradigm that's expiring, a new one that's evolving, and a lot of pain that comes with that. A lot of pain, but I also see there's so much potential because the old structures are breaking away, which means the new ones are emerging.
Yeah.
And we can either look at the structures that are breaking away and, oh my God, it's terrible, and we're destroying the planet and all that, but there's a moment, there's a crack in that where the light. I mean, it's a little just it's cheeky to say that, but it is through that crack, when the paradigm is breaking loose, that the new paradigm can evolve. And I think that's why we need to listen to all these new impulses, whether we like them or not, or agree, or if they feel right for us. We have to challenge and question our values. It's just we need to do it with an absolute necessity, because this paradigm doesn't work.
Yeah. And up until recently, like, people would meet, a man and a woman, of course, it had to be to have an intimate relationship. Then they would get married, and people wouldn't even discuss, like, what is the purpose of this marriage, and why do we meet, and what do I want? Do I want, like, where are the boundaries?
Yeah.
How do we interact with other people? Can we hug other people? Can we go to dinner with other people of the other sex, yes, opposite sex? Like, what is our container? People wouldn't even talk about this because they would
That's the best question. That's the best question, Kasia, that I feel we should always, intend and ask. Like, for example, when we started this meeting today, you did a little meditation. So we gather the field, and there's an intention, there's a container. That's the same, in a relationship. It's a container. It's a container. It's a field. And to be clear and in agreement, what do we want this? What is the purpose of this container? What is the purpose of this relationship? What is the purpose of this friendship? What is the purpose of this group? If we can just evolve around purpose, so we know what we're doing and why, there's so much potential in that.
Mm. And it starts to happen. Like, people start to question that. I had a period in my life where I questioned if I am monogamous or not. And I was with this for probably like a year, just exploring inside. And then I realized that, yes, I am monogamous, and I'm longing for this alchemical container. I really believe that relationship creates like an alchemical container where everything can cook and beautiful things can emerge from that. But it's up to every individual, whatever they choose, yes, and wherever they are led to by their heart and by their belly. That's the best.
I think also we need to give ourselves permission to experiment and experience, and not lock ourselves too much in this is who I am, this is what I am. As you said, I had a period of trying that out, and I realized that's not for me. I think that's really healthy. I think, ideally we should all do that. We should all see what is for me, not just inherit some concept and then think that's it. I think it's healthy. It's healthy to experiment, and again, transcend and include. Come back to, no, actually, monogamy is the right container for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if anyone has any questions, you can type them in the chat box, and I will ask one more question, Louise, about altered states of consciousness, because I know that for a while you were interested in exploring that. Through different methods. In Poland, it was pulse on bed. that
Yeah,
fascinated you and you really
yeah.
got a lot from it. But yes, like how do you feel, like what is the role of altered states of consciousness, and is it something that you are still
I'm very
exploring?
interested in that. Yes, absolutely. And what is altered state of consciousness? Some of them are induced by breath work, by body work, by pulse in bed, by psychedelics. There's many, by dance, by trance. You know, there's many ways to alter our consciousness. But the reason why I am so interested in it is because there's so much more information that's available for us. Our brain capacity, we're just using such a small amount of our brain capacity. All the, you know, it's the future that's really there for us to call in if we lift our consciousness, if we get out of all the inherited conditioned thinking that we believe is reality. But what it is, it's, you know, inherited conditioned thinking. And in order to get out of that, we need to lift our consciousness in whichever way that is. But that's what I'm really interested in. How can we create the future? We need to listen to the impulses, to the sensations, to the intuition, to whatever is there, you know, and that, you know, the higher, greater field of consciousness. I don't know what it is, but to listen to information, pick up information that transcends our everyday consciousness, because our everyday consciousness is limited.
Mm.
There's so much more for us to know, and we actually know it. That's the interesting thing, Kasia, that, you know, in these altered states of consciousness, I've had many experiences of, oh yeah, I know this already, but it's like I can't recall it when I'm down there. But we already know. So it's just about aligning with ourselves. It's not like new information. It's just we can't really process it down here unless we're open to wanting that. And for me, it's like that's how we create the future.
Do you have a favorite way of accessing that
That's a
higher
good.
consciousness?
I have many. Walking in nature is like just the normal one. Being very aware of my breath work practices, also doing breath work. I'm also trained a breath work facilitator. That's also a way, and plant medicine is another way. That's a very, you know, intense way that I approach with a lot of humility, but it's powerful and it's sacred.
Mm. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So is there anything that you would like to add at the end?
I don't think so. I think I've spoken about the things that I'm really passionate about, and I know, you know, I know they're up here, but that's just wonderful to talk about that, because I think, you know,
Mm.
it's about the future. It's about the future. What are we creating?
Yeah.
I think we need to ask ourselves these questions.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
you're welcome.
So I will ask us to close our eyes again for a moment. So close your eyes and just be with yourself for a moment again. With your breath, with your body. I am grateful to all that has unfolded. I am grateful to our physical bodies, to our emotional bodies, to our mental bodies, and to our spirit. And much gratitude to all the beings that gathered here with us. Thank you for witnessing this dance. And may it inspire people and unfold in beautiful, fruitful ways, and may it touch hearts. And then those hearts may touch other hearts, and may it ripple out in this ocean of love and beauty. take a deep breath, and when you are ready, open your eyes. Thank you, Louise.
Thank you, Kasia. It was a delight.
Okay.